This segment of the podcast is brought to you by Rock Treads, the aluminum traction kit for any wading boot. Official traction of the 2016 and 2019 World Fly Fishing Championships, and used by both Team USA and Team Canada, along with 24 other teams from around the world.
Hey, what's up, listeners? Before we begin today's podcast, just a bit of housekeeping here for you. And an amazing announcement that I want to make sure that you guys are definitely aware of. So, the first thing is on, Stillwater School. We have a Stillwater School program this year at Skacheen Lodge in beautiful British Columbia. So for anyone that's ever wanted to learn Stillwater, this is the place. And your instructor is the one and only Phil Rowley. He and I have teamed up. We've partnered up to bring you guys a in-person, on-water, Stillwater School, and that's from June 24th to the 27th at the lovely and beautiful Skacheen Lodge out in British Columbia. So basically, if you've ever wondered, about the Stillwater fishery and how it works, the insect life, the lake life, different tactics, from subsurface to surface to indicator fishing, all that sort of stuff. Of course, Phil will do his fly tying as well, and what flies work for each time of the year and everything like that works on the Stillwater topic. So making sure that goes with you guys as well. So one of the really cool things is the lodge itself. I mean, it's $1,600 per person. It includes everything you can possibly think of, except for your fishing license. You're going to have to buy that on the government website. So all your meals, all your drinks, all your boats, rod fees, all that sort of stuff at the lodge is taken care of. The lodge offers 5-star food, super nice, beautiful setting, beautiful lodge. The accommodations are great. I can say this because I have been there, and that's why we're going back, because it's the perfect setting. It's perfect lodge. There's beautiful wild Kamloops rainbow trout in the lakes there. There's over 16 lakes. Each of them have their own private boat on them. So if you're out, you're fishing, you want to take after the course, you want to go and fish your own private water, that's totally possible to do so. These are amazing. Like, I can guarantee you're not going to see another person on that lake. So it's just you and a friend or your partner, or whoever it is that you want to bring with you, if anyone. And it's just, to have a lake by yourself, to smash these massive rainbows that just fight like tanks. It's so wonderful. So again, that's June 24th to the 27th. It's a 4-day, 3-night program. It's at Skacheen Lodge in beautiful Kamloops, British Columbia, and it's also, Phil Rowley and I are putting that on. So again, that's the Stillwater School. One of the ways, if you guys are interested in learning more about this program or doing this program, and it is going to fill out because we only are limiting it to 12 people, is to reach out to me via DM, reach out to the lodge, that's Skacheen, SKITCHINE, lodge.com, and sign up for the Stillwater School there. Or, of course, you could always reach out to Phil Rowley, flyfishing.com as well as another option. So these are all great opportunities. It is going to go fast. Make sure you get yourself in there. So I'm looking forward to seeing you. It's, again, like I said, an amazing opportunity. If you've ever wanted to learn Stillwater, or if you do know Stillwater and you do want to brush up on some skills and learn from one of the Stillwater pioneers and legends, Phil Rowley. All right, guys, let's get back to the show. Welcome to the Fly Fishing Insider Podcast. I'm your host, Greg Keenan. This is Season 3 of the Fly Fishing Insider Podcast. In this episode, we aim to bring you the biggest and best stories from those who work and make our fly fishing industry truly great. The Fly Fishing Insider Podcast dives deep into the past, present, and future of all our guests, uncovering their amazing stories and journey. Join us each week as we interview a new podcast guest. Also, if you're new to the show or not yet a subscriber, make sure you hit subscribe after this episode. Welcome to the Fly Fishing Insider Podcast. Today's guest, Phil Rowley. Phil, welcome to the show.
Negative things about it.
Yeah, I always say to people, I proved my math teacher wrong. I do walk around with a calculator in my pocket. It does cost me $200 a month, but I do. So.
Yeah. And I'd like to say with my writing, if my English teacher could see me now, right?
Exactly, right.
Who cares what a noun is? When am I ever going to use this when I leave school?
Yeah, exactly. Actually, it's funny.
Pay attention.
You know, it's funny. I was actually talking to yesterday. I was talking to Jim Bertucci from Scott, and we were talking about how much we rely on technology, and we were just saying how I used to know so many people's phone numbers. Besides my wife's phone number and my own phone number, I don't know anyone's phone number anymore. I feel bad.
It's funny. It's like, if you don't, it's if it's not on my phone, I'm in trouble, right?
Yeah.
or what you say, just text me or email it to me, and then I'm paranoid. There's no loss of interpretation, no memory issues, no jotting down information wrong. You can copy and paste, so you take the human, the human error element out of it. Way more accurate and efficient.
Definitely so. All right, Phil, let's circling back here. So you also, getting with the app and transitioning from the app, you've also now transitioned into, like, here you are getting all techie into the online stuff, right? In the online courses that you've now developed with one of the local guides out here in Kamloops.
Yeah, I've had online learning on my brain probably for 25 years before the technology was around. I just thought, what a great way to be able to reach out to people that, don't have a local fly fishing show in their area or don't have a local club or, all those barriers to learning. Wouldn't it be great if you could just, if you lived in a remote community, you could just go online and learn how to, tie flies, how to read lakes, a whole host of things. So technology now with, YouTube and places like that and online learning. And of course, I think the pandemic has accelerated all of that as we want to stay in touch with each other through Zoom and other video communications has sort of trained us to all use this as a resource. And hey, this is pretty cool. I've done online fly tying courses through the Stillwater Fly Fishing Store Brian and I had. I just did a chironomid course a couple of weeks ago. I had 25 anglers join me for that, 25 fly fishers join me, and did online, a blend of online camera, live tying, and, linked with a PowerPoint presentation, and you can record that presentation, and I can provide that to my students, access to that presentation after the class, so they have it in perpetuity. And then, of course, you mentioned Jordan Ulrich. He and I were sitting together a couple of years ago down at a show in California where we were talking about this and finding we were very like-minded, and why not work together on this and work, it's two or three doing the task is a lot easier than one person doing it all the time. And so we're just working on what we call the Stillwater Fly Fishing Academy, or Stillwater Academy. So that's stillwaterflyfishingacademy.com. And we will have courses there for people to take, whether they're the courses they can sign up for and have live content for them. Jordan and I on camera interacting with them as well, or what they often refer to as evergreen courses that you could just sign up and take at your leisure, right? Whether that's a fly tying course or something, you can just follow along at your own pace and desire to do that. So it's a way for us to, again, help spread the good word about Stillwater fly fishing and help those people, work through their struggles, about how to read a lake, how to use electronics.
Can you give us some tips on how you read a lake? That's something that a student would get.
Yeah, that's and it's funny. I participated. The backstory on this is I participated in the 2003. Was it 2003? The Canadian Championships are in Grand Prairie, and I wasn't able to get up there before the practice days. Right, I had work obligations, so I basically flew in midday of the day before the tournament started, and my teammates had the chance to pre-fish the lakes, and I was getting my notes on napkins and all kinds of crash course on these lakes that they had a chance to fish, and of course then the next morning you're up to bat and you're taking live pitches, and it was sort of my philosophy how I approach a lake that sort of got me through, and that we were pretty successful. We actually won the tournament. So I sort of joke that's when I retired from competitive fishing, because there was nowhere else to go but down after that. But I was pretty fortunate. I had Brian was on the team, myself, Todd Oshie, who's a Canadian angler that's done very well in the competitive circuit. Norm Ruprecht, who was out of Edmonton, very quiet, was the top angler of the whole tournament, won the gold medal for that. And Kathy Ruddick, who's very famous BC angler. Her and her husband used to run Ruddick's Fly Shop. She now lives retired in the Kamloops area. So we had that. So you're out there by yourself. Of course, your competitors aren't going to give you much help. It wasn't cutthroat fishing or anything like that, but everybody's just focused on what they're trying to do, right? So, when you start to fish a new lake, the first part is doing your homework, right? Before you ever leave the driveway, you can, today's internet, Facebook groups. Years ago, it was more online forums you can use to find out information, talk to local fly shops, local friends who fish the lake, do all that. I mentioned Google Earth earlier. You can pull that up and have a look at the lake, from knowing how you're going to get in there and get home again without getting lost. And bathymetric maps, resources like BC Map Books or Anglis Atlas. If you're in British Columbia, you can have a bathymetric map as the underwater contours, so you can, when lines are close together, that's a rapid change in depth. Where lines are spread out, that's a gradual change in depth. So you can figure out drop-offs, points, sunken islands, find all these places. And basically, you're building a bit of a game plan of how you're going to approach the lake, rather than just sort of standing at the launch, scratch your head, and decide to go left, right? And so, you're trying to run a route that's efficient, because you've got gas motors or power or electric motors. You don't want to be all over the place and wasting your energy. Of course, when you get to the lake, so you've got a bit of a preconceived notion. Then when I get to the lake, I use my powers of observation. So I'm going to, walk the shoreline. I'm going to turn over rocks. I'm going to look at weed stalks. If there's spider webs, I'm going to look in them. I'm going to do those kind of things to get a measure of what food sources are in the lake. A little aquarium net is a handy little tool to have with you to catch things and see what they're doing. What color is it? How big is it? How does it move? You don't necessarily have to have a degree in aquatic entomology. But I think you still should have a good working knowledge of what the bugs are and, how they move and what they look like, of course, so you don't confuse them, and how they emerge. And when they're most likely to, if they're an insect that emerges, or food source that emerges like an aquatic insect, then you can, make good fly choices and good presentation choices, right? Yeah. And that observation carries on the water. So whenever I leave the landing area, even though I may be in a boat that day that has my outboard on it, I'm usually not flying out of there at 100 miles an hour. I cruise very, very slowly, looking around. I got my polarized glasses on. I'm looking on the surface, in the water, to see, signs of a hatch, see things swimming by, paying attention to water temperature, because that's critical for stillwater trout fishing, because it's all about oxygen content. The warmer water gets, the less oxygen it holds. So trout are that's why they struggle a lot of times with when competitive fish get in there, like perch, suckers, and things like that, because those other species are way more active or have adapted to live in really cold and really warm conditions, whereas trout, we say I'm looking for water temperature in that 50 to 65 degree Fahrenheit range. That's sort of the happy zone. Yeah. Where a trout's metabolism is, they're eating a lot, they're digesting quickly, therefore they're eating again. Their metabolism is running at peak efficiency. When you get below those temperatures or above, they really slow down. And when you slow down, you don't need to eat, right? Or if the water is too warm and it's not holding oxygen, the trout's more concerned about trying to breathe than eating, right? The analogy, if you and I ran the Boston Marathon and actually survived it without me, in my case, not having a heart attack, and you cross the finish line and somebody jams a double bacon cheeseburger in your face, you're probably not going to want to eat it, right? You're just trying to get your breath back and get your body back into control again, and then you might consider eating later. So it's a bit of an abstract analogy, but just to sort of, it's so important. So, and then when I'm on the water, I'm looking for three key elements, and I call them comfort, protection, and food, because that's when I learned to fish rivers and streams, when I first started fly fishing, that's what you were looking for. Comfort was all about typically oxygen, which I just mentioned, protection, or the trout feels safe and secure and is more inclined to eat, and then food. So that analogy to me works on lakes. Comfort is about the water temperature, weather systems, lunar phase, those kind of things, and then protection is about proximity to depth, because Stillwater trout if they get spooked, they go scurrying off into the depth, or rippled water surface that breaks up and diffuses light like riffles on a stream would do, so the trout feels more secure. Feels less visible. Weeds are in there as well, because trout like weed beds as a form of protection. And then of course food. That's, as fly fishers, generally what we're trying to do is imitate or suggest the food sources, or suggest something that looks like food to a trout to eat. So you always want to put yourself where food lives, right? So in a lake, that's generally water 20 feet deep or less, because of photosynthesis and its effect on plant growth, which provides habitat for all the food the trout likes to eat. So, and I always say, as a fly fisher, when we're fishing water 20 feet deep or less, we have way more presentation options available to us. You could fish strike indicators, you could fish a floating line long leader, you could fish a clear intermediate, you could fish a type 3 and strip flies around, creepy crawl them around slowly on a slower line. All those, you've got lots of different things to do. Whereas when you get out into deep water, 20, 25, 30 feet of water, your presentation options narrow. Usually you're using faster sinking lines, and that's not an area that trout spend a lot of time out of. That's kind of their timeout room, I call it. When they're not happy, they go out there and pout and suspend. And a lot of times you can coax them to eat, but a lot of times they're not. There are exceptions, of course. Chironomids can certainly emerge out of there. They'll feed on zooplankton, as we mentioned, but there's not a lot of food sources out there. There's much more,
in the shallows.
Your shallow shoals, or your Costco, Walmart superstore of the underwater world, right? So the logic being, if you park yourself in those areas, somebody's going to come by and get some food at some point in the day, and hopefully you can be there for that for that moment. So that's sort of, in a nutshell. Again, I did a whole chapter in the book on this, how to find trout in lakes, and explain these variables a little bit more. And there's usually, to me, not one single thing that is there are those moments that happen. You never say never, but usually it's a combination of things. And because we are not trout and never will be, we never quite know why trout do the things they do. And I'm sure the trout don't. I often joke, if you were to put a trout on the Oprah Winfrey show and she was to interview it, why do you do this when this happens? The trout would go, I don't know, I just do, right? They're just an impulse-driven, simple. We give them so much intelligence, right? We give them, we're not trying to catch Stephen Hawking out here. Right? We're just trying to catch a trout that basically swims, eats, and if it's lucky, gets to reproduce, right? So, that's all it does all day, right?
I wish I could.
Maybe I'm simplifying this too much, but these are things, with Stillwater fishing, there are times you just get to sit and think, right? These are the sort of, I often say I do something called, stuff I think about when I'm staring at an indicator, right? Because your mind's wandering.
Phil, I'm gonna run with that. I'm gonna. Hey, thanks. I'm gonna steal that idea. I'm saying this publicly. I'm gonna steal that idea and play around with some Instagram stuff, reels, or some funny videos on stuff I think about when I'm staring at an indicator.
Yeah, I had a little more of a colloquial term, began with F. Not knowing your audience, but stuff I think about when I'm staring at an indicator. Right? People say, in seminars, I get asked and I give an answer like, what you're doing. Why do you think this is happening? Well, based on my experience and the study I've done, this is the questions I've asked as well. This is why I think it happens. And people, where'd you come up with that? And I said, that's just stuff I think about when I'm staring at an indicator, right? So it became a bit of a running joke in one of my seminars, and I just took it and ran with it, right?
Yeah. I am going to do that, and I'm going to tag you in some videos, and
sure. I'll share them through my social channel.
Let's do it. Let's just do it. Let's, stuff I think about while looking at it. Because you know what? My brain, and it just goes, and then it's like you sit there, you're watching that indicator, and it doesn't freaking move. And then you turn your head to grab something, or I'm going to go look at something or organize my flies because they're kind of messy and it's under.
Yeah. Well, trout also have periscope vision, right? They know exactly when you're not looking, right? As soon as you turn away, and of course, we've been waiting for that moment for that indicator to go under, and we all know as soon as it goes under, you got to be quick on the draw, right? You got to set that hook quickly because you're not in a direct contact with your fly. There's a 90-degree, change of direction between goes out and then down, and of course when it goes under, we just stare harder, right? We look out and it's gone, and you just sort of lean in and go, "Where's my indicator?"
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it pops back up. It's like, great. And I've been waiting for an hour for that.
Yeah.
Right?
It's hilarious.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like,
Two loons are calling off to the side or something. You look over to see what the hell they're squawking about, or if they're fighting over a fish, and you look back and your indicator's already coming up, and you're like, well, that's pretty much gone. Yep, I've been there.
Yep.
I don't think there isn't an indicator fisherman that hasn't, so for sure. It's hilarious.
No, you can hear the cursing across the lake. No!
That's funny. So, Phil, you also do. You mentioned a few times. So you mentioned your students, and like, who are your students? I'm thinking this is like your courses, like that you teach, like at lodges or locations, or I've
done all
seminars.
of those, all the above. I have done, seminars in the dead of winter at a hotel. I've done seminars, for clubs, weekend workshops, one days, all weekends. I've done destination schools at lodges, in British Columbia, like Stony Lake Lodge, Corbett Lake Lodge, those places that we can offer an all-inclusive food, accommodation, seminars, evening, morning kind of thing. And then obviously you're right there. You can go out and, implement or use or experience the stuff you've just learned, all right? And then have that opportunity to debrief. And then in those schools, those on-the-water schools, one of the things I really like to do is make sure every student gets to spend time with me in my boat, or two students at a time, and really see what a crazy person I am, and see what I think about while staring at an indicator. I do all of those as well. I do, there's a big show, group of shows in the States called the Fly Fishing Show. And I kind of, I've been doing that for probably at least 15, maybe 20 years. It's been a long time. And
do you do all their shows? Do you go?
No, I have done, there's, you get sort of assigned and you get a chance to pick, but I've, before the pandemic, which has had a real impact on, sort of face-to-face shows, there was a show in Linwood, Washington, which is Seattle, Pleasanton, California, which is the Bay Area, Denver, which is a really vibrant show, New Jersey. I've done Marlborough, Massachusetts, which is Boston. I know I've spoken in Detroit, Memphis, Tennessee, all down the West Coast. And oftentimes when I'm down doing the shows, like typically the Linwood, Pleasanton shows were different. The Seattle show was in mid-February around Valentine's Day or Family Day here in Canada, or President's Day in the States. And then the following weekend was in California. So I just stick around and there's no sense flying back and forth, all right? So I'd speak to other clubs, do in-stores for local fly shops, those kind of things. So lots of different ways to educate and help people with their Stillwater fly. And that can be just fly tying seminars, and it can be a blend of fly tying and sort of, how to fish lakes type of seminars, or just how to fly fish lake seminars. I always joke with the fly fishing show down there. I'm sort of the token lake guy. Everybody thinks I'm a little crazy down there because everybody else is river and stream, salt water, those kind of things. There's not too many lake specialists, if you will. I hate using that term with myself, but down there, people that choose, that's their preferred way to fly fish. I always joke we're kind of like the ugly little stepchild in the basement.
Aren't we though?
Nobody quite knows what we're all about, right?
But the crazy thing is like I've like we both have a lot of friends across the border, me and you, and it's funny when they're like, yeah, no, we had a good day. I'm like, yeah, so did we. 40, 50 fish, and they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah 40, 50 fish days. Like no word of a lie. Like it's quite often like 16 to 20 fish is an average day. I did a seminar for actually taught guides at a fly shop down in the West Yellowstone area, because the fly shop owner down there realized that when the rivers are in runoff, typically mid-June,
there's not a lot of fishing going on. There's a lot of frustrated anglers, but you've got down around the West Yellowstone area, you've
tons
got
of great lakes.
Oh, you got Hebgen, Henry's, Quake, Cliff and Wade, and I'm probably missing a bunch more, and Yellowstone Lake in the park, and that is primo time to be on the water.
Yes.
On Stillwater is mid-June, and because he said to me, when people fish lakes, they drag a woolly bugger around on a Type 2 or a dry dropper, borrowed from river and stream fishing. And I said, those are probably the two least methods I would ever consider using, right? And I remember taking the guides out and saying, as we're sitting in a swarm of emerging chironomids, watch this, right? And they were just blown away that a little bug like that would be so effective to imitate, right?
It's deadly.
Had some great fishing. I love going down to that neck of the woods because especially Hebgen Lake in August, it's most of our lakes locally here are all sort of shut down for summer because they're so warm. It sits at about 6,000 feet, so you've got calibatus hatching the entire month. So you've got great dry fly opportunities. We don't get the dry fly opportunities on lakes river and stream anglers get. So any chance we get an opportunity to toss a dry at a fish, I'm more than happy to do it. So you've got fish, they call them gulpers down there. In the mornings it's flat calm, and they're feeding on the spent spinners, and later in the day they'll feed on the emerging duns and things like that. And you just got these fish coming up and these audible gulps, right? You can hear the fish take this fly down, right? And it cruises, left to right, rises every 5 feet. You just lead them, right? And just watch it all happen. It's so much fun down there. And of course,
you're just just picturing those rings and just casting to those rings and off the back and boom. Yeah, it's just, you're killing me, Phil.
Pick a fish and wait for it to come into range, make a nice accurate cast, drop it, right where in the ring or where you anticipate it to be next, and then watch that fish just without hesitation, just poke its nose out and eat it. And those fish down there, they don't get near the pressure our fish do.
Well, so it's still water, right? They're not fishing.
They're a little more friendly, all right? They're a little more, whereas, some of the BC lakes, I think some of those trout have seen so many chironomid patterns, they know more about fly tying materials than we do. Well, I had somebody once say, lake fish are big, which they are. That's one of the benefits of lakes because they, in productive lakes, trout can get really big, but he said they're also dumb. And I went, well, no, not really. Sure, I've run across pretty dumb fish in rivers and streams too. Mm-hmm. But I'd argue that on lakes that, when the chironomid hatches on and these lakes get a lot of pressure or whatever, they can get on, or they get on glass worms and things like that, Chiabris, translucent. I think if somebody ever really unwraps that bug, they'll build statues to commemorate them.
But the blobs and the blobs are doing well.
Yeah, right? But I find fishing lakes, just as challenging or more challenging than a trout sitting on the Henry Fork sipping in only cripples with the left wing on the water, right? Those kind of scenarios. Right, they're products of their environment.
I agree with that. Lake fishing it's super intimidating. I talk to a lot of people, a lot of people, and they've all said it's super intimidating. And people don't know where to start. And what type of boat do you have to have? Do you have to have a boat? Do you just stand on shore and cast? There's a million questions. Like a lot of guys, and you probably know this, Phil, is a lot of guys that I speak to. Are like, oh yeah, no, we're Stillwater guys, and we fish in Pyramid. Okay. Great Lake.
Yep. I fish Pyramid, yeah.
So Great Lake, and they're using ladders. I'm like, okay, well, you can't do that where we are. You know what I mean?
Nope, because you put a ladder in the water and you'd be up to your nose in mud. And we don't. I think again referring back to the book, I talked about this because I love to fish from shore. It's fun, right?
Yeah.
But we don't get the opportunity because we've got, in no particular order, you've got access issues, right? So you've only got a right of way of the boat launch. You can't fish either side of the boat launch because you're on somebody's property. Typically, you've got all kinds of shoreline vegetation around so you got to get your fly over that, and if you hook a fish on the other side of it, how the heck are you dragging it back through?
Yeah.
You've got trees behind you. You got the mud we mentioned. You try to wade in, and you're gone.
You're in there,
Yeah. Although we do, of course, tend to put our boats in the water and then fish towards shore, right? I was with a guide on the Bow River years ago, and I was filming an episode for a TV show. I do some hosting for the New Fly Fisher, and I film with other shows as well. And the guide said to me, "It's funny." He says, "Everybody in the bank is wading up to their armpits to cast in the middle of the river, and everybody in a drift boat is casting to the bank."
It's true, though.
And we're never happy with where we are, right, or where we're doing. We're always trying to be somewhere else.
It's true, though.
Kind of a funny, but it's a good analogy, right? So yeah, it's lakes. I fish Pyramid, and there's some bloody big fish in that lake.
Yeah.
And I've stood on a ladder, and that's a little different because when you hook a fish and you go to land it, sometimes you're in 2.5, almost 3 feet of water, and you want to bring it in a little shallower and net it, and all that kind of stuff. And you just step off the ladder without thinking, and all of a sudden you're just going down.
You think?
Right? Yeah, it's a little different. All of a sudden you're up to your waist, your chest, because you forgot you were 2.5 feet up on the ladder, right? So, yeah, a little different. Got to see lots of ladder technology down there. So, some guys have DIY'd the unique ladders with rod holders and cup holders, and all kinds of things to. So there's a level of art.
I wonder if a guy will I wonder if there'll be a ladder tree stand where you can sit your ass down. I wonder if someone Sims, the new Sims ladder or something.
Careful though, you get that away. And other lakes, like you mentioned other things I do the hosted trips.
Yeah.
And the one I do a lot of is down to Argentina to Lago Strobel. The world probably knows it better as Jurassic Lake, sort of the World Series, World Cup, Stanley Cup of Stillwater fishing down there, because the average size of the trout in that lake, they're all rainbows, is between 10 and 15 pounds. And that's all fishing from shore, because that lake gets quite windy.
Yes.
Around the lake. Like I fished in 60-mile-an-hour winds. When you come back from a trip down there, you'll never whine about wind again.
Oh, really?
No. But the fish love it because they come in. It's a very, high pH lake. It's full of scuds, and not big gammas, but a lot of smaller ones.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that wave action just churns food up for those trout.
That's why they're so big.
And they're huge. And we're fishing the same trout stuff: balance leeches, scuds. There's no real chironomids. It's not really, because the lake's so windy that there's just hardly any mud or weeds. It's all rocky and kind of volcanic. Some of it, porous rocks that the scuds get right into and obviously get swept out. So you're fishing, 2 feet, 3 feet, 4 feet, 5 feet of water, or maybe, and we fish indicators down there and balance flies nowadays as well. And, that's where I took my personal best rainbow my last trip. I've been down there 3 times, and it was, I think it was 22 pounds. So,
and this is all in 3 feet of water?
Yeah, so that was about 6 feet down under an indicator, maybe in about 10 feet of water, because they're cruising along. We were on a bit of a steeper shoreline where that one was.
Yeah.
And I watched that fish swim along, and but you see so many big, like it's clear water, so you can see them a lot of times. They're like submarines going around, and just through the waves and the ripple and all that stuff. And then I saw this fish swim up, and then just sort of descend down into the beautiful blue water that's down there. And also my indicator just went under, so I wasn't asleep. I actually set the hook, and when that fish came out of the water, it looked like a spring salmon.
Yes,
that's when you have this "don't screw this up" moment in your head, and line management, get the line on the reel. You don't want to be standing on that. And I was fortunate enough to land that fish. But you can even get them on dries down there. I remember the guides. I said, "Well, what else do they eat down here?" He said, "Well, snails and zooplankton." Like, there's no bait fish. They don't eat those. So these fish are getting that big, eating that little tiny stuff. And
that's remarkable, actually.
When he said zooplankton, I had a couple of blobs with me, and I went, let's try this under an indicator. And he looked at me, the guy scoffed at me, and went, "Oh, those will never work. Looks like an egg fly." Whatever. And then I threw it out, first cast, boom, it's gone. It's under. So 15 pounds. I'm like, okay, this is pretty cool.
Like I said, they're killer.
Yeah.
They're killer.
But they'll eat boobies down there.
Yeah.
We'll get them on big, chubby Chernobyls. One of my most bizarre dry dropper combinations was a mouse with a scud underneath of it, right? Because they'll come up and chase the fly on the surface. They're curious, and even though the only other bugs I saw in there were a few small caddis, right? Nothing that you would book a vacation around. But incredible experience to go down there. The culture, just traveling to a foreign land, you're at the complete other side of the world. You're looking at the Southern Cross. There's no Big Dipper. The food is unbelievable. The wine, the camaraderie, all that stuff. It's a pretty cool experience. So usually I go down there in December now, which is their spring into summer, and take anywhere from 8 to 10 anglers with me. So they can find that information on those trips.
Yeah, hopefully for 21 you'll be able to fire that back up again.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get down there. I've got a list of about 8 or 9 people so far, at least, that want to, pretty keen interest to go down.
Yeah.
And hopefully in early December we can do that. But I still don't think you can travel down to Argentina right now. And of course, all the restrictions on us coming back to Canada, we are, and other countries are doing similar restrictions as well, as far as negative tests and quarantine periods and all that kind of thing. So it makes it a little challenging right now, but hopefully things will get this thing under control and get back to what we were more normally accustomed to.
Yeah, definitely. I hear you. I sit here as I somberly had to pass off some trips to. I sent people on assignment. We sent some industry friends on assignment that I should have been going on, but I'm like, you know what? It's not going to happen. So yeah, that's how it goes.
No, I've been pretty fortunate between all those speaking engagements and shows that, I fished every Canadian province, I think, except the Maritimes.
Yeah.
I've fished all the western states. I've fished some of the eastern states as well, all for Stillwater stuff, which I've been very fortunate to be able to do that. And of course, you learn the local nuances and what locals do and the different things, which only adds to your toolbox of things you can do, right? So it's fun to learn. I always try and if I'm speaking down there, to tag on an extra day or two,
just to get out. Yeah, for sure.
Get out. And, it's not always about fishing lakes. Sometimes I go, can we go fish striped bass in the bay? Because I've never caught one, right? So I want to do something different. And I use, it's funny because people say, well, when you fish for pike or walleye or lake whitefish, we do those fish on the fly here where I am in Alberta. Do you fish any differently? And maybe the flies change a little bit, but I approach lakes all the same way.
You have to.
Right?
You have to.
Well, they're all living in the same similar environments. They all have the same influences on them. Species-wise, they may act a little different, like a little different habitat and things like that. But, when you're out in the summer months, I go chase walleye on the fly when they split out in the 20, 25 feet of water. We dangle for them.
Yeah.
So we pull out the fly rods. You can watch all the gear anglers looking at us like, what are these weirdos doing out here? And then we start hooking fish. So balance minnows, simple balance minnows, and use our sounder to find them and anchor on top of them and
boom,
go at them.
Yeah,
and they're fun. They're fun. They're very soft feeder. Even though they've got all that teeth, they can be like I fish them under indicators or fish them
interesting
naked technique, and the takes are just like a chironomid take. That line will just tighten because they inhale, right? They don't attack like a pike. They just suck it in and they'll hold it, realize that it's not what they thought it was. Poof, they spit it out. So you got to be really quick on the draw.
I'm gonna have to hit you up on that one, Phil.
I found my chironomid skills came in big time handy catching walleye on the fly.
I'm gonna have to hit you up where you're going.
We've got walleye lakes within 35, 40 minutes.
Because we only have we only have them in the Columbia and BC, right?
Yeah. And people tend to look at them as a pest fish there, and also because they taste so darn good. But most of our walleye lakes are either you pay. You can get tags to fish certain slots, or they're catch and release because they, if you to fish them traditionally with like a jig and a minnow, it's fish after fish after fish, right? It's tough to beat bait, but we get them on the fly, and I've had some really good days, dangling for them, hanging things under indicators, casting and stripping. I figured them out by nobody was really chasing them on the fly, but just studying how conventional anglers went after them. Slip bobbering, strike indicators. Fishing jig and a minnow vertically, that's dangling. Fishing crankbaits and retrieving them, well, that's just casting and stripping, right? And we can do all of those kind of things. It's just sort of thinking, how do conventional anglers do it and what techniques are they using that we can are applicable to the techniques we use fly fishing, and you can catch fish because the fish aren't down there going, I don't eat flies. I only eat repellent, right?
Give me that plastic. Give me that plastic. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I hope they don't do that.
No.
I actually had one day fishing for walleye. I outfished a bait angler. Only happened once.
There you are.
Only happened once.
Only once.
But I cling to that moment.
Yeah, take it while you can. He's probably brushing up his fly fishing skills. He's like, I'm not letting it happen. So,
I've had bass on the fly. You name it. Sorry.
I hear you. No, I hear you. Hey, Phil, I do want to talk about something that you also did successfully during COVID, and that was your book with Orvis. Yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah, that's the Orvis Guide to Stillwater Trout Fishing. Unfortunately, COVID delayed it a little bit, but it'll be out 1st of May. It's on schedule for that. I've sort of poured my heart and soul into it. It's about 110,000 words, and about just under 300 pictures, diagrams, those kind of things, and covers such subjects as, I think we touched on some of why you'd want to fish lakes, how to approach a lake, entomology, leaders and knots, dry fly fishing and targeting sighted fish, floating line techniques, indicators and lawn leaders, sinking line techniques, attractor techniques, equipment, watercraft. Might be it. I'm sure I might have left a few chapters out, but I broke it down that way, and looking forward to it coming out. There's been lots of interest for it.
So like, did Orvis approach you, or did you approach like how?
Yeah, that's kind of a funny story, because I've had the good fortune. You may have heard of Tom Rosenbauer. He's
never heard of him. Never heard of him.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
Never heard of Tom. Yeah. So I had the good fortune to film an episode of The New Fly Fisher in Alberta with Tom. We were fishing the rivers and the brown trout streams we have in central Alberta. And, we sort of hit it off, and we see each other at shows because he's there too, speaking or representing Orvis or just dropping by as a visitor. So in the fly fishing shows, they have these authors booths, and your scheduled time in there, and you would sit in these authors booths because there's the show, Ben Ferinsky also has the Fly Anglers bookstore. So there's a book there that people can come in and buy books. And of course, the authors are there. They've got all the books that we've written, and they have a chance to get an autographed copy and interact with the author and all that good stuff. As speakers, we like it because you get to sit in the chair and rest for half an hour, because after standing all day, it's nice to sit in a nice chair for a while, take that load off your legs. So Tom and I were partnered together, and we're just talking in between people coming by, and he said, we need to do a Stillwater book, and I think he'd be the good guy to do it. So, and if you've ever been at shows, sometimes you have these discussions that nothing happens from them. It's just show chit-chat, I'll call it. But this one actually grew roots, and so as I got home, email exchanges, and then contract and discussion with publisher, and then at that point it's between me and the publisher. Tom sort of did the intro, and off we went, and then it was 2 years in the making to get this project done. So that's sort of how this all came to be. It's just sort of that Orvis umbrella, their Orvis Guide 2 books, but it's basically I had free reign to write about almost everything and anything I wanted to.
And you did this yourself, or did you have helpers, or like
all myself, sitting in front of a computer screen, having great days of writing, and then periods of I don't want to do this. This is my 4th book now, so the thing about book writing is the research is fun, right? Taking pictures is fun. Yep, and figuring things out and talking to people. Yeah. Doing the research for whatever the subject matter you're doing, taking pictures. Yeah. I like photography. It's sort of been a byproduct of becoming a fly fisher, because you want to capture things. Or writing my first books were fly fishing books, so fly tying books. So you had to learn macro photography to take the step-by-step pictures and take bug pictures and things like that. And that's a learning curve unto itself. And the actual writing part sucks. Yeah. It's a lot of getting organizing your thoughts, getting them down, and then editing ruthlessly, tearing them apart, rereading them, coming back, and I know this book, it's going to come out, and there's going to be things I still don't like about it, right? And at some point, I just, thankfully, the publishing company, they have copy editors, proofreaders, they're very, very good at picking things up, because after a while, you glaze over, right? You just see the same thing over and over again, and they pick it out and just sort of clarify points, and which I think obviously improves the overall book. So it's a team effort as far as the editing process goes. And you definitely need that, because, I'm not a writer by profession. It's sort of a byproduct of becoming a fly fisher and wanting to communicate and educate others. So you kind of learn along the way. So,
well, I get you, Phil. It's kind of like, I think I talked to you about this before. I shoot, we shoot videos, and I do this audio, like the podcasts and stuff. And I could have a conversation with anybody. But, when it comes to the editing, like, I just drag my heels. I hate it. I just, like, it's painful.
Yeah, for my YouTube channel, my wife likes editing. Doesn't like the photography too much, so she's becoming a good little editor. And I've got a friend of mine who likes to edit as well, does my fly tying videos, because I don't mind the shooting stuff, but the editing stuff, when I do the shows for the new fly fisher, we, going out and filming the show, that's fun. Yeah. But then we have to do what's called, as you're probably familiar with, shot listing, right? Because you just shot a whole pile of footage, so now you got to sort of catalog it all. That's kind of tedious and takes time. And then you've got to pull, I usually film to an outline. I've got some idea of what I hope to happen and I can follow, and then I've got to build a script from the footage we shot that matches that outline, right? So an editor can go in and sort of make you not look stupid. The editors have a lot of control. They make or break me. Cameramen and editors.
That's crazy.
Respect for them. But yeah, it's a process. Right?
No doubt. You speaking of
not always what they say, not always strawberries and cake.
Strawberry, yeah. Phil, I don't know how you do it, man. Between everything that you're doing, you're also involved with TU Canada, and just tell us quickly about a bit about what's going on there, and some involvement, and I'm
the director of marketing and communications. I sort of split my role between my sort of fly fishing business and Trout Unlimited Canada, and help them with brand development. It's not-for-profit conservation groups. It's a challenging world, right? Because you basically survive on the generosity of others, and help with those social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, help develop YouTube, maintain, keep their website up together, and, work with the organization. And it sounds like a large organization. There's 7 of us across Canada right now. That's because most of our fundraising is dedicated to, conserving, protecting, and restoring Canada's water, right? So we spend most of our staff are biologists that help coordinate, on the water restoration, bank repairs and destruction of dams from time to time. That's always fun. And just fish rescues. We have a huge project we do down in Calgary every year off the Bow River, because they have irrigation canals that are fed by the Bow River during the warm summer irrigation period. And of course, fish get into those, and then they close the head gates off in the fall, and then the water starts to recede, and then the fish instinctively head to the top of the head gates. And we electrofish, net them off, electrofish, and put them back in the Bow River, catalog them all, and we probably rescued close to 1 million fish so far in the history of that program.
That's cool.
That would just, over the winter months, would just, dry up and die. Pretty glum life, and it's amazing how big. I took my kids down when they were younger to it, and the size, some of the rainbows and browns that get into those canals are impressive.
Well, the Bow's a pretty good river.
At least pretty good. It's a river. Every time I fish it, I go, I got to come down here and do this more often, because it's only about 3 hours away from me, which is nothing for a crazy fly fisher to go drive.
It's 8. It's 8 for me, so it's a little far.
Yeah, but it's still, river. I love river fishing. It's a lot of fun. It's compared to the expanse of a lake, it just seems so much more manageable at times. And I know I love European nymph. I love that whole, figuring all that out, and not, nymphing without indicators and tightline nymphing. It's got 100 different names nowadays, but I really like that. That fishing, and it's an unbelievably, when you get, the hang of it, it's a pretty deadly way to fish a river.
Absolutely. So, yeah, Phil. So lots going on. You got good stuff coming down the pipe here for 21 with your courses, your schools, your Stillwater Academy, your hopefully hosted trips, and your book launch. So that's all good. What else would you? What else has Phil Rowley got going on?
I've got a pretty active YouTube channel, so I'm always trying to grow that. Fly tying videos and sort of on the water vlog or educational videos as well. With Trout Unlimited, we've got a unique peer-to-peer fundraiser starting in February for about a month called Tying for Conservation. So we've been fortunate enough to have fly tyers donate an hour or so of their time to do an online class on from spay flies to Atlantic salmon flies. Trevor Tatarchuk, as you probably know, ties some pretty incredible chironomid patterns. I'm going to be doing some my balance flies and jig flies. I fish in lakes as well, so you can watch. It's if you go to tucanada.org. Or just follow us on social media. There'll be information about that. And it's a by donation, so to watch these things, you minimum $25 donation, which we're going to turn back into, our conservation efforts across Canada. And depending on the tire, if you want to donate more, you get more. You might get the flies, the tire ties. You might get I'm offering a one-on-one video call for certain donation levels, those kind of things, coaching, those kind of things people can have with me as well. So that's going on. Still doing my column for BC Outdoors magazine as well.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. That's your fly.
I've done the fly of the month there, or the fly of the issue, for well over 10 years now.
It's with Mike Mitchell.
Schools, the Stillwater Academy is going to get rolling big time this year. Because of the impacts of the pandemic and not being able to hoping to do some on the water schools and some guiding, again, pandemic restrictions permitting, to do those and hopefully get that hosted trip into Argentina and get down there for a fourth time.
Yeah.
Always lots going on. I don't sit around very well. It drives my wife crazy.
Mine too.
But I'm not one to just sit around and do nothing. There are those days I do have. God, it's nice just to sit around and do nothing. But my mind's always going.
Phil, those days that we want to sit around is when we're staring at indicators.
Yeah, that's when I do my thinking, right? And I'm also doing more and more online, like Facebook and YouTube live events.
Okay.
Yeah, on different topics as well. Sometimes they're fly tying. I might just sit and tie flies for an hour. But it's a great way, again, to reach out to people, to pass along a little knowledge, sort of let them know about things I'm doing as well, or things maybe in interest in following. And there's always lots of interaction there. I really enjoy those. Get lots of interaction, lots of good questions, and just people enthusiastic about, learning more. It's a great sense of community, right? To come in and everybody's interacting and asking and answering questions about whatever topic we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. No, it's awesome. Definitely.
Yeah.
So Phil, if someone wanted to reach out to you, ask you questions, buy what's it called, the guided trip, or learn more about the academy or the app, blah, 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 all the fantastic stuff you got going on, where can they find you? Well,
I have a website, flycraftangling.com. And I freely admit it's in sad need of an upgrade. I'm hoping to get that done. If you want to purchase Stillwater-related products, myself and Brian Chan have our Stillwater Fly Fishing Store at stillwaterflyfishingstore.com. I have email, flycraft@shaw.ca. I joke I'm socially connected, so I have a pretty active Instagram account, Phil Rowley Fly Fishing Facebook page. I mentioned the YouTube channel. All get in touch with me that way as well.
That's awesome, Phil. So for sure, I'm going to put that within the show notes. And like always, I want to thank you for being a guest today. And listeners, I want to thank you guys as well. It's been great. It was actually such a good interview. A lot of laughs, Phil.
That's good. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Like I usually say, it's hard to get me to shut up. I love to talk Stillwater fly fishing.
I know you do. So, all right. Thanks, audience. This podcast episode is sponsored by River Rat Rafts. Looking for a quality, affordable inflatable boat this season? Then look at River Rat Rafts. It's no surprise that River Rat is known for their stronger build, better frame, and quick setup. as well as portability. See for yourself at riverratfishing.com. That's riverratfishing.com. Try the difference with River Rat Rafts. You've been listening to the Fly Fishing Insider Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, tell us by liking this episode and subscribing to the show. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Fly Fishing Insider Podcast. See you next week.